Welcome back to the Fox Den, everyone, a podcast series from West Shore Community College. We are reviewing the Winter 2025 book of the semester, Klara and the Sun, by Kazuo Ishiguro. This episode covers part 1, where we chat about the book's symbolism with library director Patti Skinner, literary themes with Professor of English Jody Radloff, and character development with Coordinator of Enhanced Academic Support Jared Seymour. I'm your co-host and professor of mathematics, Wade James. And now, part 1 of Klara and the Sun.
I'm Patti Skinner, but Klara might refer to me as the coffee cup lady.
I'm Jared Seymour, and today I'm the cardigan man.
I'm Jody Radloff, and as Klara would call me, the lady who speaks through the silence of writing.
I'm Wade James, and I just want you to know that the sun is 93 million miles away from Klara.
Thank you all so much for being here. And I want to jump right in with some questions. So right away, we're introduced to the importance of the sun in the novel. So it's incredibly important to Klara. And why do you think Ishiguro chose the sun as the symbol?
So Klara is this artificial robot, but despite that, kind of has this kind of religion towards the sun. So Klara deifies and worships the sun in much the same way that cultures from around the world deified and honored the sun. The sun is this benevolent figure who gives nourishment and seems to personally care about people.
I think we kind of see like the sun taking on this source of hope too. So it's like Klara sees it as something that can help and heal. Even early on in part 1, we get that hint that she watches how the sun interacts with the world, and it's almost like she believes it has the power to fix things and to heal. And even though she doesn't really fully understand how just yet, and I think Ishiguro is kind of tapping into this idea that sometimes just believing in something, whether it's the sun or a higher power, or even just the idea that things will get better, that can be enough to keep us going. So it's kind of tapping into that sort of spirituality already early on in the book.
So what does the sun mean to you all?
It's kind of funny because I felt like Klara last week. You know, we're in the middle of a Michigan winter. It's been like polar vortex, blizzarding, and I was just puttering around the house and I was doing chores, and all of a sudden a glimpse of the sun was in the sky and pouring in my window, and I ran to the window because we hadn't seen the sun in days.
An idea I appreciate about like the sun as a symbol is the way that the sun gives in abundance without any sense of reciprocity, no expectation. I'm wondering if Klara identifies anything in that kind of relationship where her role as an artificial friend is to give, is to care.
Maybe Klara looks to the sun as a model for how to give unconditionally. And so maybe she looks to the sun as like, wow, that's something I can strive to be, like that type of relationship.
Yeah, it was interesting. All the different, there were all these perceptions starting to form already in the store. And I think part of that is how perceptive Klara was, that she really seemed to pick up on a lot. But were there ever times where you were confused by Klara's limited perception?
Because the whole story obviously is from her perspective, it's an interesting way to read the novel, right? And so it's not like that typical voice that we would hear a story through, and we have to kind of pick up on these contextual details, and we're being sort of introduced to Klara's world as she's being trying to figure out those puzzle pieces, right? And so we're put into the puzzle with her and trying to figure it out. And I like when she's trying to figure out people's emotions and why they feel the way that they feel and what might have happened. And she's almost trying to give people these little backstories as to why they might be reacting the way that they are. I think I do that sometimes myself as a person. I like giving people stories, you know, if you're in the airport, what that person might be doing. And so it kind of had that vibe to it for me. And it kind of makes you more aware of how we as humans rely on things like tone and subtext and emotions while Klara's figuring these things out, and how we take some of those things for granted. And I also think it helps to start connecting us to Klara in a more emotional way because I'm seeing it through Klara's eyes, and she has almost this childlike quality, and she's trying to kind of navigate this world and figure out what is going on, and we're navigating it with her. I think we start to connect with her in a way that we wouldn't have if we were not hearing it through her voice. So it starts to make me just connect with Klara, I guess, on that one-on-one level.
I was in it with Klara and I was wanting to figure out more along with her, and kind of it propelled me through the novel. I think Jennifer Lundberg Anders described it very well. And she said, reading Ishiguro is like trying to find your way through a mist and you're not sure where it's headed. I wanted to get to that end point. So I enjoyed the journey through that. What about you, Jared?
I love Ishiguro's style. I think his use of perspective, the way in which Clara's voice like comes across as both childlike but kind of muted. Like we don't have emotional outpouring. It's she seems pretty steady. We see that she's narrating retrospectively. So I'm excited already. I'm like, okay, this is not something you get normally where someone narrates from their birth essentially.
I like how the author uses Rosa in order to shape the thoughts from Klara. Both Klara and Rosa observe something happening outside of the shop, and Rosa kind of plays this naive AF that isn't quite understanding what's happening. Having that contrast between the two AFs also helps us learn more about Klara and her internal dialogue, because she's wondering, why isn't Rosa having these same questions, these same thoughts, dare I say, these same feelings that I'm having?
I think Klara was set up as special from the beginning. There was something really unique about her. She's able to understand so much about the world, even more than her counterparts that are AFs.
And that makes me wonder, is she special? Is there a ghost in the machine? Or does she just appear to be special because she's programmed in a more sophisticated way?
We're introduced to Josie, who immediately sees something special about Klara. What do you think Josie saw in Klara? Why was she immediately drawn so strongly?
You know, we had Rosa kind of staring ahead and just kind of blankly staring at the sign across the street and just kind of waiting to see what was going to happen. And Klara is very much trying to figure out the world. Her eyes are moving. She's watching the people on the street. And that has to be perceived by Josie as she's walking up, right? Is that Klara is this more engaged and curious and interactive AF, who, when Josie starts to kind of interact with her, she gets excited by that, right? And I think that tells us a lot about what Josie is looking for as well, is that she's wanting connection. And that we start to see maybe where there is that loneliness there, where she wants a connection with her AF. She doesn't want the newest model. She doesn't care about having that new slicker model that's maybe in the better part of the store.
Klara, like you said, is trying to figure out the world, seems a little bit more independent. And Josie was the same thing. Josie came over and was talking to Klara through the glass, trying to have private conversations with Klara outside of the purview of the adults. They saw themselves in each other.
Oh, I love that. Like they sensed a kindred spirit.
Yeah, a little bit of a kindred spirit between the two of them.
What did you all make of the Cootings machine?
Klara prides herself at being more observant and more aware, but she quickly realizes that just because she might be more observant, she still has a lot to learn. She's corrected by boy AF Rex about what that machine's actually doing. Rex says it's creating pollution. Klara thinks, oh no, it's probably fixing pollution. It's cleaning it. But no, in fact, it's smoking up the whole street and obscuring the sun.
I think also in that scene where the Cootings machine first is kind of coming up, is we're starting to see how naive Klara is in her understanding of things, but she is starting to figure out cause and effect, but in her own way, right? And so for her, it's not necessarily thinking about pollution, it's taking away the sun's nourishment. And the sun has the ability to heal and to make people happy. And so this Cootings machine is almost this evil being to her, right? Because we go back to the sun being almost godlike. So now this Cootings machine is almost this evil entity that is coming into play that's taking away that nourishment. And so that was kind of an interesting play there too, because we start to see her figure out cause and effect, but not in the way that humans would think of cause and effect. It's in this more emotional way, whereas you would think an AF would be more scientific and logical and be processing, what is going on scientifically with this pollution. She's looking at it as it's taking away this good, nourishing, healing entity.
I want to pick up on what you said, Jody, and bring back the sun's healing power. So she notices somebody across the street that's being very still with their dog, and she hopes that the sun will shine on them with its healing power. And in her perspective, it seems to work. What did you guys think of the bigger man and his dog?
Yeah, so I think it's significant. Again, I think it kind of shows how Klara is building her own kind of faith around the sun, right? So she doesn't have human experiences to sort of shape her worldview. So she's creating her own sort of system of beliefs based on what she observes. So the sun to her isn't just a source of energy, it's something that can fix things and it can heal and it can bring things back to life now and make the world better. And this moment kind of strengthens that belief for her. And so we're kind of wondering as readers now how this is going to come into play later in the book, because we start to sort of get hints that Josie maybe isn't feeling so well and that there's something going on. And so we start to get a little bit of foreshadowing here, I think, as well as why is this so important to Klara to see that beggar man coming back to life from the sun's nourishment. So I think we are starting to see a little buildup there, a little foreshadowing.
Any other thoughts that we didn't get to?
Well, one thing we haven't talked about is the ending of this first part of the book and how it walks us right up to this big adventure. Even though it looks like Klara and Josie are going to become a team and go on an adventure in the future, there's a little bit of what's going on, especially with Josie's mom asking Klara to mimic Josie's walk. And I was like, man, that is kind of creepy, kind of weird. Jody, you mentioned foreshadowing. Why would the mom want the AF to be able to mimic Josie's walk? And she discussed this with Klara in private. We're getting ready for the adventure. Everybody's got their bags packed. It looks like we're getting ready to go. We've got a good solid foundation on what Klara is, and we're looking forward to getting to know her a little bit better. Josie is definitely energetic, but why was she sick? Why does mom want Klara to mimic her walking pattern? What's going on here? I want to find out more. I thought that this was an excellent way to end this section of the book.
My stomach definitely dropped at that point, and it's where a little bit of darkness starts to creep in. And Patti was just talking about Klara's optimism and how, she's so optimistic and seems so good-natured, and we get this sense that she's so naive to what's going on in the real world, so to say. And so it's that part where mom is pulling her aside, and mimic the walk. You're going, okay, what is going on with the creepy mother? And there's a darkness to the mother's eyes that Klara is observing. She's also starting to pick up on something there, but again, doesn't know how to interpret that and can't quite contextualize that yet. There's a sense of darkness kind of looming there underneath all of Klara's optimism, where we are getting maybe a little bit scared for Klara too. So they're off to go on this adventure, but will that adventure be what Klara expects it to be, or is there something out there that she's not aware of yet?
I thought it was also a fantastic way to end part one. The mother is marked like similar characters that Klara observes as wearing high-ranking clothing. And so we also have a sense of some kind of hierarchy in the society that is signified through dress, which I'm excited to learn more about, and that Klara will get a kind of an inside perspective on being invited into the home of Josie.
Yeah, and you remind me, manager had sort of warned Clara that some children will be sad outside the window, right? Not every child can have an AF. Not every, they might walk up and they might tease you, or they might be angry and they're frustrated because not every child can have an AF. And so yeah, we start to get the sense that the world out there is not so peachy, right? It's not so equal.
Yeah, and we don't know the mom's intentions yet. We don't know if she's good or if she's evil when she's asking to see this walk, but it definitely is intriguing. It made me want to know what was so distinct about this walk. Josie has this mysterious ailment, and like what has kept her away from Klara? Was she sick? I feel like this is a big spool that we're trying to unravel.
It is a fantastic cliffhanger. The author just kind of drops this on you at the last minute, like, oh yeah, one more thing. I'm really excited to get into the second part of the book.
So we're early on in the book, right? And we're just introduced to her through her eyes. So how are you guys feeling? Like, what's your connection to Klara so far? I know for me, like I've said it a couple times, I start to feel that connection with her because she seems so innocent and she seems so caring. And I love how she observes the world and is trying to figure out all these puzzle pieces and is trying to figure out what makes people tick. Why do they feel the way that they feel? And I mean, it's like one of the reasons I majored in sociology in college, right? I like to look at the world and observe and try to figure out, why do we do what we do? Why are people feeling what they're feeling? How do you interact with that? And sometimes I don't feel all that different from Klara. You know what I mean? Like I look at the world around me and I'm like, why are people doing that particular thing? Or why did we structure this the way that we did? And so the way that she asks questions and sort of that innocence, but also that curiosity, like she just seems to have this innate curiosity in her that draws me to her and connects me to her. And then you realize that you're feeling that way about an AF. This character is supposed to be an artificial friend, and I'm getting attached.
Yeah, I really appreciate her as a narrator, precisely because it draws in the question of how Ishiguro represents human subjectivity. We know that Klara is a manufactured being whose memories begin to store, when she is new. And so far, like a lot, at least my sense of her as a narrator is there's depths that aren't accessible.
Because of the way it was narrated, I felt so much like sympathy and like I felt one with Klara. Like I was in this with her and I was trying to figure out things with her. I mean, that's so tricky, right? Because she's not even a person. Like, and we're assigning all of these person-like emotions and feelings, and it really does blur that line. She has all these humanistic qualities, but what is it that makes us human? What is it that makes us different? She's emoting and she's picking up things about the world, and we're really relating to her, but yet she is something completely separate from humanity. So I think that that's what Ishiguro is trying to do, right? He's trying to blur that line and make us feel all this empathy for this main character and the narrator of Klara, and almost trick us into like falling for this AF. Like we're befriending her too.
And I agree 100%, as the author really wanted us to ask those questions, right? So if we start to relate, and I'm doing this with my Comp 2 students right now who are reading the book, I'm having them look at it through the lens of what ethical concerns are raised that mirror our current society, and what questions does the author want to spark in us and get us asking ourselves. So, we're so attached to technology in all these different facets, and it's continuing to grow day by day, second by second. And so asking ourselves those questions, I think he does that in such a brilliant way already, just in part one, because we are connected to this character. And like Patti said, we're feeling that empathy. And then you start to say, wait a minute. So I'll be very curious as the book unfolds to see how things turn out in this world.
You've been listening to The Fox Den, a podcast series from West Shore Community College. This has been our discussion of the Winter 2025 book of the semester, Klara and the Sun, by Kazuo Ishiguro.
Thank you so much for joining us. That's our podcast. I'm Patti Skinner.
And I'm Jared Seymour.
And I'm Jody Bradlaugh.
And I'm Wade James.
Patty's computer died, but she's coming back online in a second.
My computer just went like : open parenthesis, frowny face.
Wade's going to make us sound smart.